Okay, welcome everybody. So in the past few weeks, we've been speaking about Yosef Atzadik a lot. Yosef is a character that's been through a lot and always ends up thriving. From a young age, Yosef starts off as basically an orphan. When his brother's born, his mother passes away. He's misunderstood by his brothers. He has great visions. At the same time, people are having a hard time understanding him. Um, thank God his father really appreciated him and saw what he was bringing to the table. At the same time, um, all his, I want to say colleagues, he was being misunderstood to the point where unfortunately, they took him to the pit and they were attempting to kill him to the point where they said, maybe we shouldn't kill him. They sold him as a slave and he worked hard. But wherever Yosef was always thriving. And eventually he became second to the king. He was seen, he was valued, he was appreciated, and he was appointed as second to the king. And this besides for the fact that when he was a slave, he was appointed as the head of the house. When he was in jail, he was appointed head of jail. So wherever he was going, he was always thriving, even though he was not in his home place. He was not in his comfort zone. Um, yeah, you could say wherever he was his comfort zone. So this was an interesting character. Besides for on a Gashmius level, also we see that Yosef's a bit magical in the fact that Ayin Hara doesn't bother him. His kids are blessed. They should be like fish, and just like the eyes don't see fish, and they can multiply, and there's no negative eye around them. Yosef's family also has this. So we're seeing Yosef is above, what's the natural planes, the natural playing order. Normally, if someone's in the in the limelight, there is negative energy, and that affects, right? Our words affect, our thinking affects, and obviously, as we're going to learn in this mimer, you can rise above it. You don't have to live in the realms, but there is energy. In other words, the negative eye does exist. It just there is what to counter it, and Yosef is obviously countering it at a high level. So we're seeing that Yosef is not only thriving in Agashmius, even on a spiritual level. There's something above nature with Yosef, and not only that, we see Yosef when getting involved in the world and creating success is not supposed to make a keli. We see when he was in jail, he asked for some help, and that was considered wrong. From his point, Yosef's point, Yosef was above nature, and Yosef was not supposed to ask for help. Yosef was supposed to just be, do, and stuff, success, greatness shows up for him. So we're seeing that Yosef is something from another world, yet he's very much in our world. He's very much involved in everything. So Yosef is giving us a window. And if we could just learn, I want to say, the Yosef method, if we could learn to click into Yosef, we have new possibilities, new opportunities open up for us. Now, obviously, Yosef's a tzaddik, but we're told about Yosef. So we can slowly step into it to emulate. In other words, everything in Torah is Hira, Torah Melash and Hira. Everything's a lesson. So yes, Yosef's above us, and Yosef's a tzaddik, and at the same time, Yosef is a window into possibility. Yosef is a window into how to create the Yosef method. To appreciate this, and also to value how much he's above us, and therefore humbly approach this. Yosef, the Rebbe points out, is his story is always around Hanukkah time, which Hanukkah is also above nature. In the fact, first of all, the whole story of Hanukkah, but Hanukkah is 8 days. And the Rebbe points out that by appreciating what the 8 days are, 8 days is above nature, we could appreciate that Yosef is above nature. But once again, how are we finding this entire life? How are we clicking into that? How are we making the Yosef available? What is available for us to start doing with appreciating this, right? So in other words, we appreciate Yosef is beyond. Yosef represents 8. That's why he gets involved in the world. Most of his siblings stay away from the world. And we're going to learn that Yosef gets involved in the world at a higher level than his brothers. Not higher level, sorry. We'll continue with this. So to appreciate this, to appreciate how Yosef's being Yosef, being super involved in the world, super effective, super successful, and yet he's remaining Yosef, right? To appreciate this, we actually look at this week's parsha where we speak about Yosef's brachas. Yosef gets a bracha, and the bracha, one of the brachas that are described is it says, Yosef, you'll be a gracious son. Yosef, you'll be gracious to the eye, which Yosef was a gracious person from the fact that you see everyone loved him. Torah describes as handsome. Torah describes as everyone, wanting to get a look at him. There was something special about Yosef, and his personality was also gracious. But what's interesting is Targum translates Ben Pyrrhus Yosef, the gracious son, he translates it as adding. So what the bracha is, Yosef's adding to the eye. So the question is like, what's going on here? What type of bracha is this Yosef's adding? And in fact, the word Yosef itself means adding. When Rachel had her son, her first son, Rachel was waiting for many, many years, anticipating, davening, begging Hashem, please give her a son. She finally has a son, and she wants more. That's her purpose here. She's bringing in Yosef into the world. She wants another one, and she says, "May Hashem add for me another son." So Yosef, to begin with, is adding, and yet the bracha is, you should be adding, and should be adding even more. So what's going on? What is Yosef adding? What is happening here? So to appreciate this, let's see what Yosef is doing on a practical level. Wherever Yosef was, he was adding. He was always an asset wherever he went. And that's why he was always promoted. That's why he was always successful. Yosef, wherever he went, he was busy adding. He goes to Potiphar, he's serving at a high level. They make him in charge. He goes to jail, he's serving at a high level. They put him in charge. He goes to Pari, serving at a high level. So wherever Yosef going, he's adding. And from a psychological level, you can say this is why he was able to focus, right? Once again, Yosef was in Mitzrayim. In the clip of the most gashmius, it wasn't just gashmius, it's chumrius. It was materialistic. It was very coarse. People there were doing obnoxious things. It was not a nice place to be in for anyone that's sensitive, spiritual, and yet Yosef was able to be there, thrive, lead, and affect the place at a high level. So you could say from a psychological point, how was Yosef able to do this? This is from the fact that Yosef, wherever he was an asset. He was busy giving. And there's halacha, that's when something's giving, it doesn't take in, right? So from a simple level, you can say Yosef is someone who adds, and he adds on a high level, and that's how we get to appreciate his and emulate and copy and recreate, and that's how Yosef was successful. And that's how Yosef was successful on a physical plane. That's how he was successful on a spiritual plane, keeping holy, keeping focused. But that wouldn't be the full story, because the question is what is motivating Yosef to be a giver? What is motivating him to be a giver, even in a situation where he already has everything he wants? You could have said in the hard times, he realized if you want to stay alive, you got to be a giver. Maybe he was not as strong as his brothers, and as a slave, you want to be successful, you have to be a giver. Maybe he was as strong because all the Shvatim were strong, but what motivated him once he was king to continuously be this? What motivated him to be a giver, and why would the Torah focus on that and give it three lashons? He's Yosef, that's who he's a giver. He's someone who adds to the table, and then they're giving a bracha that he should add. So to appreciate this, Kabbalistically, Yosef represents Yesod, which Yesod is the foundation. Yesod is the foundation, it holds up the building. But the reason it holds up the building is it has a connection to the ground. Same too, whenever there's a movement, there's a motivating factor that holds it together, right? And that holds the whole company, the whole movement, the whole idea, and keeps it going. So Yosef represents Yesod. Now, in our own life, there's many different ways we could show up to life. We could show up to life is that we want something, and nothing's going to get in our way, right? And that will take a strong stand, and we're going to be fighting, but we might sometimes get caught up with the fight. And before you know it, as we're getting caught up with the fight, we're getting stronger and stronger, but also we're acknowledging the fight more. Then there's, and what happens as you acknowledge the fight more and more, the fight gets more real and real. And if you're not winning, eventually it tears down at you. Another level is you might say, I'm going to stand strong, hold my grip. And, as things go at you, you might get stronger, but eventually also you're acknowledging the fight. You're still dirty with the fight. Then there is a certain level of you focusing on what you want. And then it doesn't matter what comes at you. It doesn't matter what challenges you. You're just marching. So you have in the spheres, you have netzach where you're fighting, where you're focusing on the fight. You have height where you're focusing on standing strong. And you have your side where you're just focusing on what it is that you want. And that creates a foundation, a strength where you're not questioning yourself. Do I have it in me to fight again? What am I doing? Or you're not having it like, I'm gonna be able to hold this together. You're just focusing on what needs to be done. What is it that I want? And just keep marching. And fights happen. Stuff happened to you. So Yesod represents this foundation where you have a certain focus. And with that focus, you're able to march towards what you want. And whatever comes at you, it's just par for the course. It's just what you had to do. You go through the motions, but you're not giving it the fight a lot of attention. You're not giving your strength a lot of attention. You're just going for it. So let's bring this to a psychological, an emotional, or in body experience. Yesod actually represents the reproductive system. And in the reproductive system, you could be distracted, you could be all over the place, or you could be focused. And we see Yosef was very focused on this. He was focused where he put his energy. We see in the story of Potiphar's wife, and that helped him focus himself. He was there. I'm here to be God's man, and therefore anything besides for that was a distraction, right? So Yosef had that focusedness in where he was creating. So let's apply that. The reproductive system is about creation, about creating in the world. That's also in his general life. Yosef had a focused creating attitude. In other words, Yosef was busy giving. But what was he mindful when he was giving is that he is creating in the world. And while he was creating the world, he was focused. He wasn't giving his attention everywhere. In fact, he was so focused, he had people coming at him. He had a whole total system of where he had all the energy of Mitzrayim, all the food, in fact, all the energy of the whole world. And he was creating a world the way he saw fit. So he had a very focused creation path where he was giving, he was adding in everybody's life in a very focused way. He had a very strong sense of his sight, a very strong foundation, a very strong sense of what he wanted. Now let's step a bit into what does it mean Yosef he was adding. Besides for adding in people's life, he was adding on two different levels. And Hasidus explains, what does it mean he was adding on two different levels? Yesod has the power to reach, first of all, it has the power to bring together all the spheres and Malchus. In other words, it has the power to bring godliness in an open way in the world, right? A lot of times the world doesn't see Hashem. Yesod its connection, its foundation. It reveals how all of this is being brought into existence Hashem. So what was Yosef first of all doing? Yosef first of all was doing what he was bringing into the world was a certain focusedness. As he was creating, people were able to tell what was his motivation, Hashem. So Yosef was adding in a way. In fact, they mentioned that that they were able to see how Yosef was trustworthy because he always had Hashem on his lips. Hashem, he was always saying, Baruch Hashem, thank you Hashem, Bezrat Hashem, with Hashem's help. It's Hashem who's doing an answer his dream. So they were able to see that he was a certain level of humility. They were able to see in everything he was creating a certain sense of this is about God. So normally, just to take it in an everyday world, normally we see a world. And if you're mindful, you could say, hey, a world does not exist without a creator. That's God. But you have to be mindful of that. Yosef, in his creation, in his experience with you, in his giving to you, in his adding to you, you got to see how this was from Hashem. You got to see how what he was doing was motivated by Hashem. So you got to see more of Hashem in it. And on a deeper level, Yosef had invited a higher level than just that there's Hashem creating the world. Yosef invited the idea that everything is nothing in comparison to what Hashem could be doing. Now, this is a very tricky term because it's run in Chassidus that everything is like nothing to Hashem. So if you just hear that term, that's very like down. It's very depressing. Nothing really matters, right? So if you just come with the bottom line is, to Hashem, this is nothing. You feel like you're wasting your time. But if you actually come to this through meditation, through smartness, through thinking about it. In other words, when you contemplate how the whole entire world belongs to Hashem, it exists because of Hashem, and then what it took from Hashem to put us in, and then at the point you're going deeper, and you're like, what did it actually take from Hashem? Just 10 sentences. In fact, just a thought. Then you can respect. Whoa, this is a sophisticated world, and in reality, to Hashem, it's just a thought. At this point, you're not feeling like it's a waste of time. You're asking, 1 second, what would motivate Hashem to create this? Because you actually respect how much goes into the world, and you're saying, for Hashem, it's nothing. So if you come to, for Hashem, it's nothing, it's like very depressing. If you come from a point of, whoa, this is so sophisticated, and for Hashem, it's just a little thing like, what's motivating Hashem to do this? So Yosef not only brought an awareness, not only did he add in people's life, and he added that it's from Hashem, he added an awareness that to Hashem, this is very small. This is almost nothing. In fact, it's nothing. And if Hashem's doing this, there's obviously a deeper motivation, and there's obviously a deeper tainug. And what that is, you got to experience it, or when Mashiach comes. But practically, Yosef added in people's life a depth. First of all, any person, when you see somebody in service, you see somebody who cares about people, that gives you life. When you see somebody, if you grew up with someone that's caring about you no matter what, you're already living a life that there's tainug in it. There's hope, there's giving, there's connection. Then on top, it's not only he's giving and adding in you, not only does he value, he's doing it because Hashem values you. Ooh, there's a God that values. And not only that, this God that values does not need you, but he wants you. This is a higher level that Yosef was bringing to the table. So bringing this all together, Yosef is super successful. From a physical plane, he was passionate. He was a good serviceman. He brought service to people. From a psychological place, he was busy with people, adding in their lives, loving. He was busy loving, taking care, in service. From a spiritual point, Yosef was busy connecting Hashem with people, giving people Hashem in their life, giving them the attention they have from Hashem. And if they're open at a higher level where they're able to see that this is nothing to Hashem, and at the same time it's very important to Hashem. Seeming like the Aron did not take up space, but yet it had to have a certain measurement. It didn't take, like, why did we have to, no, if it's not the certain measurement, it's not kosher. So there's this interesting Indian where it has to be a certain measurement. So in other words, like, it's almost nothing, and yet it matters so much. Yosef was giving that to people. And the Rebbe points out is, it says that what the creations create is greater than what Hashem creates. And obviously, 1 second, it says if all the philosophers got together, we couldn't even create a wing for a mosquito. Couldn't even create a mosquito to stay alive, or to have whatever Hashem's creating in a mosquito to be conscious or whatever. So how is that possible that we're doing greater than what Hashem created? And the answer is Hashem creates with Malchus, but Hashem creates in a level where we don't see godliness. We have the ability to emulate Yosef. We have the ability to emulate, to show up to the world with an awareness that there's God. Not only we can show up with awareness that there's God, we can show up with awareness that this all to Hashem is nothing. And yet, it's very important to Hashem. So this allows you, if you're living with this experience, this allows you to do great things. It allows you to be rich for real. What does that mean? You have people who have a lot of things, but because they don't know if they're going to have it tomorrow, or they know how hard they worked for it, they can't experience it fully. They can't, use it fully. They're constantly worried about it. Someone who's fully rich is someone who knows he has it, and he could just give it. He could give it generously because he knows how to receive it again. He knows how to get it again. When we have this perspective, that's all from Hashem, that's a level of richness, because we're walking around with a level of lack of worries, getting to enjoy what we have. When we know that not only it's from Hashem, that it took nothing out of Hashem to have it, to give to us, that means Hashem really wants us to have it. That Hashem really wants us to have what we have right now, to be giving it, to be sharing with it, to be experiencing it. that allows us to be in a state of fully involved. And this is why Yosef was above Ayin Hara. This is why Yosef was successful, because he wasn't sitting and worrying. He wasn't sitting and he was busy, focused. He had a strong sense of sight, strong sense of what he was creating, what he was adding in the world, with a strong sense that this is from Hashem. This is taking nothing out of Hashem, yet he's giving it to me. How am I going to use it? And like this, he didn't have to make a keli because he just had to be doing. Just do what you have, use what you have for Hashem. So Chaim Chaim, we all have riches. The Rebbe told us we're all rich. And at the same time, the Rebbe said, go do something about it. And then he said, at the same time, you're rich. We are rich. We have what Hashem is giving us. We should see that it's from Hashem. We should see and experience that it takes nothing from Hashem, and yet He feels it's important enough to give to us. We should go and use it, go and create, go and focus our energy of creating and create massive, amazing things. Chaim.